Hello, everyone, and welcome to Seriously Loco, the Seriously Crazy fan podcast for El Paso Locomotive FC. I'm your host, Phil Bakke, and I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, Mikka Burrell. Mikka, man, I don't even know how to kick this one off, to be quite honest. We normally say, how's it going? But, I mean, there's really no words left to describe what exactly is going on in the land of the Locos.
No, I mean, if you were with us on the Seriously Loco live stream for the Miami game, then you know from that how bad the vibes are. Although, shout out to everyone that joined us for that, by the way.
Yeah.
That was still fun, despite getting shellacked 4-0, which we could talk about the game, but it just doesn't even feel relevant anymore. We're on an 8-game losing streak. What can we say? I mean, it's the same crap over and over, so... But yeah, I think you're alluding to something much more breaking, I guess.
Yeah, and we'll get to the news because obviously I think everybody listening probably knows it already. But to clean up some admin in the meantime, if you're finding us for the first time, you can find us on socials at Seriously Loco. We're on Twitter and Instagram, and then you can find us on your favorite podcast platform, whatever that may be. We also are on Patreon, and last night, in the wake of the breaking news, which it was announced last night, and I want to make sure that I'm reading this correctly. El Paso Locomotive announced that they had agreed a transfer deal with Hungary's Vasas SC for defender Bence Pavkovics. The club announced today, per club policy, details of the transfer were not disclosed, but it is the largest Locomotive transfer fee this season. During his stint in El Paso, the Hungarian defender recorded 21 starts in as many appearances, playing a total of 1,890 minutes during the 2023 campaign. The club thanks Pavkovics for his contributions this season and wishes him all the best in the future. For those doing the math at home, that's exactly 90 minutes and one appearance short of starting and playing in every single minute that Locomotive have played so far. And those 1,900 minutes just went straight out the door. Mikka, I mean, in the midst of turmoil on the field, losing one of two players who has been ever present for us this season just feels like the kick in the teeth that Locomotive supporters just, I don't know. It's an understatement to say we didn't need it. It's devastating at this point.
Yeah, I mean, at least we got a record transfer fee this season, which again, if you're doing the math, we only know of one transfer that garnered a fee. So, which, by the way, this is not to pick on the writer of this, no, because Alberto Ichapa does great work and he's doing his job by communicating what's being told to him. But just the inclusion of that is just hilarious to me. It's kind of insulting to the intelligence, to be honest, but and definitely is PR spin to make this what you call devastating news somewhat palatable, and it hasn't worked. People have definitely soured from that statement and from the news that yeah, like you said, 1,900 minutes are out the door. I think Bence Pavkovics was our most consistent defender this season, both in terms of playing time, but also in terms of form. He's had different defensive partners, and he's looked comfortable with each one of them. He was one of the marquee signings, I think we can say, for Brian Claerhout coming into the club. So, yeah, I mean, on one hand, if Bence wanted to go, because he is going back home to Vasas SC, which is a Hungarian second division side, then, it's hard to stop that kind of thing. But the fact that it happened is still devastating, and you just wonder what's going on behind the scenes, because he had just had his contract extension, the option was exercised by the club. So you would think if they're exercising that option, they've talked with the player about it and they published it. So what happened between now and 34 days ago when he was extended? It stinks. Something stinks.
Yeah, it's one of those things where and there's a little bit of discussion talking specifically about the contract option, exercising that option. If it was a move, or if the club was exercising the option in an effort to protect Bence's value ahead of a potential transfer in the summer, I get why you would do that.
Sure.
And I don't get why you would announce him as returning. Like, if you know explicitly why you're exercising this option and it's not to keep him for next season, you just don't say anything.
Yeah, of course.
Like, you just exercise the option, talk to the player about it, and then protect his value. And then there is no weird optics of, hold on a minute, Maka King just renewed. Why is he leaving? Like, these are the sorts of situations that, like, hurt the credibility of the club with the fans. And when there's not, like, further explanation or transparency, like, in these sorts of situations, it leads us to then just speculate, like, well, the only explanation that I have is that they 100% planned on bringing him back next season, and something in the meantime, maybe going 8 games without a win, what expedited Bence's exit. Like yeah. Maybe he didn't feel confident that coming back next year would be fruitful for him.
Maybe so. I mean, that is a great point about kind of the optics and how really Locomotive don't have control of the narrative, and so the fans and us are just left to speculate about a lot of this stuff. And I want to bring up like a different kind of take or viewpoint that I saw in like comments on social media, which of course the comment section is not the end all be all of anything, obviously, but it is interesting to see Hungarian football fans talking about this transfer. And a couple comments stuck out to me of basically saying like Hungarian players always do this where they go abroad and then they go home for the money. And if that's the case, we don't know. I'm not accusing Bence of anything. And who, you know, if you're offered the same job at better pay, why wouldn't you take it in your home country? But there was basically just a suggestion that like Hungarian players, generally speaking, may not be the most ambitious. And I think we've seen, you know, post Puskás, like, has Hungary really been a major player on the football world scene? Not really. I mean, Dominik Szoboszlai, he's kind of like the great hope, I think, but other than that, I don't know. I just thought it was a really interesting viewpoint and one to consider.
No, that is an interesting point. And I think in the club's defense, like you said, it is, if a player receives a bid like this and has their heart set on returning to their home country, and if like the terms are better, all that sort of stuff, keeping him is going to be tough. And at the same time, like, you don't have to give it like, and maybe the terms of the deal were really, really good. Although I'm willing to bet that the club would have disclosed the fee if
it was flattering,
if it was really good, you know, and it may not have gone out over there. They may say it's not disclosed and then told, you know, people what it was, because you know, we all magically found out how much Haji Berry was going to Egypt for, right? Like,
I mean, we found out what Diego Luna went for, which was a pittance.
Yeah, and it wasn't that much. So like
sub 1 million.
So,
which,
I mean,
you know, we have to be realistic about the levels that we're at, but still.
Yeah. In this case, I'm willing to bet it could be less than 500,000, because I think 500,000 is a notable number in USL Championship.
Sure.
I'm willing to bet this was between 1 and 250, maybe.
That, and yeah. If that's considered a coup over winning for the rest of the season, then okay, you know, we don't have to keep tabs on the club's books, right? You know,
Right.
we're coming from the idea of from the viewpoint of wanting to be competitive, and this is the most anti-competitive mid-season transfer that we've done in recent seasons.
Since
We are down
Diego Luna.
bad.
Since Diego Luna. Like, I mean, if we're being totally
Yeah.
honest, like,
Yeah. No, yeah, I
is-
think that's fair to say. Yeah.
this is I joked, and so I did mention the Patreon article last night, and I joked in the article that this is the second worst piece of transfer business that the club has ever done. I don't know how much of a joke it is. Like, I think it might just be correct, but in terms
I think you
of,
were
like,
being like facetiously accurate.
yeah. So, so with that being said, I mean, the track record is not great. There seems to be, and I think maybe where this then goes is like, I mean, there's a couple of different things about this transfer, which is one, like, if the guy who was playing every single minute of every single game is vulnerable to departure, then who isn't? You know, like, we have some stalwarts around the club who have been around for a long time, you know, who I don't think are going anywhere. And similarly, we have guys who have only been around for, you know, this season, a little bit of last season, maybe. I mean, I guess the concern is, does Bence's departure, like, spur any other departures?
Well, as you said, the European transfer window is wide open, and we have heard murmurs of other players being unhappy, homesick, not settling, whatever. So, yeah, I mean, let the speculation begin, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and in the case of some of these situations where guys are under contract, but clearly, like, kind of the marker's been set that they can be got at, and I do worry about the likes of well, basically anyone holding passports. Like, that's the
bleak,
concern.
But yeah.
And again, as you mentioned, like, we talked about it on the show, I think it was a couple of weeks ago, we talked about the fact that, you know, there's been murmurs of people not being super happy. There were even discussions about the coaches show and maybe some,
You know, that's a really interesting thing because, so, you know, Brian had his coaches show. Well, when people are listening to this, it'll be 2 nights ago, Tuesday night or Wednesday night, at the district, which he does, I don't know, what is it, monthly maybe? And the news dropped pretty much right as they were turning the mics off. And so it's just really bad optics. And I've seen diehard Locomotive fans who are more forgiving of the club call this out and say, that's really bad optics and a really bad look to drop such shocking news right after we got done having an opportunity to talk to the technical director and the head coach about it. And it is. And one wonders, one has to think it's on purpose. You know? So
yeah.
it's just, and I know that sometimes these things also depend on the other club, you know, announcements and things like that. But I mean, to Hungarian second division, like, with all due respect, I don't think we need to be beholden to their PR necessarily. So,
well, and I mean, dropping the news at whatever 7:15,
right,
like,
on a
Mountain
Wednesday
time
night.
On a Wednesday night, that meant it was like the early hours of the morning in Hungary,
Europe,
like maybe like after, you know, like maybe like 1 or 2 in the morning, depending on whatever the time zone. So, like, Vasas isn't dropping, like, the big news on Bence joining at 2 a.m. Like,
Sure, yeah, of course.
So the timing just felt really, really off. And I mean, I think it's one of those things that, you know, we've talked about. We've talked about the way the club, like, handles stuff like this in the past, and the reality is, like, should, you know, in any other situation, people would probably say like, it's not really fair for like the coach to have to go out there and field these sorts of questions about what's going on. But like you said, like he has the title of technical director and is in charge of like forming this team and is in charge of like personnel decisions. So, I mean,
who better to answer those questions?
Right. It is 100% in his purview. And
in concert with others, with,
of course,
Andrew Forrest, with Alan, with the ownership. But yes, of course, he's the only public facing one. Let's be honest. The others don't give interviews.
Yeah. Which
they don't give press conferences, I should say.
Yeah. Well, unless when times were good, Andrew Forrest did make an appearance on a Locomotive broadcast. But that was short-lived. I would say the other aspect of this being that, yeah, they knew. I'd be willing to bet, and again, this is like pure speculation because we have no like insight into the inner workings of like how it goes. But I guarantee if the money was good enough, like the business, we talk about like the business side and the player decision side being separated from a general manager and a technical director perspective. If the money's good enough to acquire a player, I guarantee you the business side is getting involved in player decisions. Like there's not
taking over the entire thing.
Complete. Right. So I think it could have definitely put Brian in an awkward spot if it was not fully his decision to like sanction the transfer.
And then he could say that.
Right.
He could say that.
And that's where I think this all really comes down to the fact that we should be, the club likely is going to be feeling this like blowback from some of their diehards of, hey, like this is a really weird decision to make mid-season. And they're probably, I would assume there are probably some people in Locomotive who are like, you don't know how it works back here, so stop like talking about it. And at the same time, like we've talked about this in the past, Locomotive's hierarchy often has the ability to get out ahead of these stories, and they opt instead to try to just minimize the impact and slide them. Like, just don't talk about it. Like,
right.
No comment, and just hope that nothing happens. Where like you have the ability to own this. Like, just come out and say what happened.
Right.
Like, it's not going to be any worse. Like, the reaction is not going to be any worse than saying nothing. So I don't know. In my opinion, like I thought it was 100% measured that it's Kostishin and Petrovic who are the players that appear on the coach's show, when I have to believe that when they kicked off in Miami on Saturday, I think Bence was already in Hungary.
Yeah. I mean, because he goes from starting every single minute to not being in the squad. Like, the math ain't mathin'. So, yeah.
And the transfer gets announced on Thursday. He definitely I'm sure he completed a medical. I'm sure he traveled there, I'm assuming, to complete it. So, that's a couple of days over the weekend, gets there, does the medical. They lock it down by Tuesday, Wednesday. And then he's, who knows? He's probably fit for Vasas' first game of the season, but because he's in mid-season form.
I mean, the optics and the politics, if you will, of it aside, Phil, where does this leave us from a footballing and a sporting perspective? Because I think that impact is yet to be seen, and I think it could get ugly.
Yeah, I mean, there's no easy way to put it. That we've got 3 senior center backs, and at least one of them is hurt. And at least one of them is returning from a long-term injury in Yuma. Jose Carrillo came off on 42 minutes against Miami because of an injury. So the only center backs that we have are Eric McHugh and Yuma fit for Phoenix. And, like, maybe Mark Navarro.
At a stretch.
if you're looking at emergency options, Mark is probably
Eder Borelli.
the one.
Yeah.
Borelli maybe at a push has filled in, I think, at center back in the past, in the really lean date, like whatever injury crisis 2022. But the sad part is, like, this isn't an injury crisis or anything like that. It's like it's one injury, and we're down to two fit senior center backs. Like, accounting for the fact that Andre Aguilera has been hurt for the entire season, but that's been a known issue. Like, it's not like he just got hurt. Like, he's been hurt for months, and out for the season. So, anyways, being down to this few fit senior center backs, combined with the fact that they're not on a good run, combined with the fact that the guy that they're losing has the most minutes, I mean, it's essentially you're blowing up the whole thing and starting over in terms of trying to build any sort of partnership between McHugh and Yuma over the next however many games that they end up playing together.
Yeah, and I think it's almost unfair to Yuma to throw him right back in to the situation. I mean, he kind of was thrown back in at Miami, and, he starts doing what he does really well, spraying the ball around, and then he also does what he also does, which is give away a penalty going straight to ground, So he's going to take some time to get back up to the tempo and the pace of the game. And that's just natural. Like, that's not even anybody's fault. That's just how it goes when someone's coming back from injury. So I just think it's unfair to our captain. And then Jose Carrillo, I mean, it's been an absolute baptism by fire for him. I think your piece cited 9 goals conceded in his 2 starts. So not great. And he looks hurt too, ? And then Eric McHugh, who's just been, like, absolutely run into the ground, as was Bence, to be fair. So, it's not great at all. We need, if there's anything that will maybe soften or cushion the blow, it's more signings coming in. Like, we need incomings. The squad is too thin. This is not sustainable. It's not fair to our current players.
Yeah, and I mean, with that, like, with all of that going on, and, you can talk about the money coming in, but is it being invested, and where is it being invested, and what sort of targets do we have? Because, I mean, we've targeted a lot of European talent. This has been known. There's not a better time than the summer to bring in players from Europe, because that's when they're typically out of contract, and that's, like, when we would be able to target them. And we've made one signing. Like, we've signed one player. Which is just, like, you would expect with free agency open, like, this is the prime time to grab players, and we've made one signing. That window is closing. Like, any really available free agents have signed. So, like, whoever we get now, we have to probably look internal in USL, or players who recently departed USL, a la, like, a Santi Patino type situation, like somebody who went elsewhere and is looking to come back. But there's not an obvious answer in terms of incoming signings, because I think that window of time has elapsed.
Well, and that also brings up the conversation of, like, the mixed bag it has been to sign European players. I mean, our British contingent from back in the day, they settled well and made multi-year careers here. But then you have, like, Harry Brockbank, who clearly did not settle. Bence, who I think time will tell us what exactly went on there. So, yeah, I mean, I think we do need to start looking domestically, just as a matter of practicality. Waiting for visas, getting a player here who might not settle and just leave. Like, it's... Sometimes I feel like we want to act like a big club, but it's actually very tin pot. I don't know if that's unfair, but it's like, yeah, the European signings are exciting, but not if they don't stay and, actually contribute in the long term. So,
yeah. Yeah, it is a fragile time for Locomotive in more ways than one. Unfortunately, I think the concern now, obviously, the concern turns to Phoenix of like we have a game in a couple of days. We've got 2 fit senior center backs. I do want to revisit the coaches show element to a small degree before we fully move on to preview Phoenix here. This coaches show kind of element. I mean, we talked about the fact that the club doesn't maybe do the best job of controlling the optics, but like when you have an opportunity like that to own the narrative, like in front of your own fans, doing whatever it was that they did in like kind of allowing the talk to focus around, yeah, we've just got a tired squad and like everybody's just, run into the ground, and then do a bunch of like puff stuff with Petrovic and Kostishin. Like, it's just not the approach of a club that takes, well, yeah, I'll say it's not the approach of a club that takes its supporters seriously or frankly like respects them. Because if there was any like mutual respect, it would be like, hey, you're about to like, we want you guys to hear it from us first and like understand there is a plan in place. Like we're reacting to this as much as you guys are, whatever. Like meet us on our level, let us in a little bit. What we got instead was like, yeah, this hasn't been good enough, which is like, no shit, right? Like, what are we doing? Like, what are we doing about it? And it was like, yep, we're trying some things and like we're trying some new stuff in training, which like I actually was disappointed to hear that because I'm like, you guys don't need to do anything wacky, right? Like this isn't the time to pull out like the whatever Ted Lasso trick plays. Like we just need to like get this team confident and make sure that like the people on the squad are actually like all bought in, because like right now it just feels like everybody's kind of like drifting from the message, right? Of like, right. You talk about control and all this stuff, and it was like such a hallmark of that winning run. Well, now we're back in this, just a total lack of control. And it just has no signs of getting any better. And you have these players who you're now kind of like, do they have one foot out the door? Like what's going on behind the scenes? And there's just nothing being done by the club with this opportunity to like do some true PR, not just like, oh, let's get visible and like do some, sign some autographs or shake some hands or like wave to the fans.
Kiss babies.
Like, yeah. Like actually do some PR and control like what's going on around the club and acknowledge the fact that like, holy shit, we haven't won since June 14th. Like it is August 10th. Like this is fucked up. We should not be like acting like everything is normal. Like this is crazy. And the fact that the club won't acknowledge it, how am I supposed to take that seriously?
You're not. It's nothing. This is the most unserious point in the season, I guess. I was going to say unserious thing that's ever happened, but that's not true. We have plenty of unserious moments in club history. Unfortunately. No, I mean, You're absolutely right. Like, there's just a general approach to, like, gloss over things and just, like, sweep them under the rug. And it's a choice, right? That's a choice. So, whatever. That means you leave open these windows for speculation, right? And people create their own narratives. We might even be accused of doing that, too. I don't know. But, from a footballing perspective, from a PR perspective, from an everything perspective, it's a disaster.
And I think it's one of those things. It shouldn't go unnoticed that, you may, in that strategy, think like, it's just like the hardcores. It's just like the
people that don't really
in the broader
have us
public
meet our margins. Yeah. Sorry to cut across you there,
Right,
but
it's like,
yeah.
no, you're good. Like, yeah, the people who aren't necessarily, it's not the majority of the people
Seriously
filling out
Loco
the swap.
match preview.
And like, it's worth noting that after the loss in the Derby, that was a high watermark in terms of attendance this year. Like over 8,000 announced at the Derby. After that loss, our highest attendance has been 6,000, and it's gone steadily down. So like, the reality is like, yeah, you might think you're just impacting the hardcores with like this sort of news, or the people who really follow, and like thousands less people are watching your product. So
Well,
like,
the casuals will just stop coming because they want to
Yeah.
see winning football. I mean,
Yeah.
this is El Paso. Like, we've talked about this.
Mm-hmm.
It's fair weather. It is what it is, you know? And yeah, the people that by and large buy all the concessions, buy season tickets, buy who I guess are a captive audience at that point, but come to one-off games and spend money, they're not going to come if the team is trash.
Yep.
And that's the thing, is we know the team's not actually trash. The team
Exactly.
was doing well, but they've run out of gas at the worst possible time.
Yeah.
And the only hope that we can have is that they then pick it right back up at the business end. But no wins in 2 months is insane. Like, I don't know how we can just pretend like that's not happening. So I'm with you, Phil.
Or the next challenge here is Phoenix Rising away, which for a long time was a just a graveyard for Locomotive, and they did finally get over the hump there. Actually did the double over Phoenix Rising last year, which seems to have lost a lot of its luster. That would have been a much more impressive stat in a previous season. Phoenix, similarly, like they have not been their old selves this season under Juan Guerra. Really inconsistent, but they've been finding ways to still get the odd win, which is more than we can say for Locomotive recently. And although the form has been spotty, they have won 2 of 6, I guess. The reality is they are totally up and down. A 6-0 win over Memphis, followed by a 2-1 loss to Miami, followed by a 1-1 draw against Switchbacks, followed by a 4-0 loss against Sacramento, followed by a 2-0 win over Monterey Bay, followed by a 2-1 loss to San Antonio. So, like I said, really inconsistent from Phoenix, but can Locomotive, like, it feels like this is just exactly not the game you want. Like, Phoenix away is never a place that you want to go when you're struggling for confidence.
No, not at all. I mean, this could not have come at a worse time. And yeah, Phoenix are really, like you said, reading out the fixtures, they're just up and down. I think the last game that I watched for them was this most recent one against San Antonio, and they got hoed at the death. As San Antonio does, scoring the winner. And they were down to 10 men for most of the game. Arteaga was sent off, which could be a boon for us, obviously. But
for sure,
I think despite Phoenix's crashing back down to earth, shall we say, post-Chance, they still have a lot of talent, and they still attract a lot of talent on top of they score a lot of goals. So, I mean, Danny Trejo, he's settled quite nicely. He's, I would say, kind of like the quintessential Phoenix player, like very attack driven, speedy. Like he represents like that new era of Phoenix Rising, I think. But yeah, they have 2 players, I think, that have at least double-digit goals already. So where they are in the table might actually be not representative of the talent that's in this squad.
Yeah, they just can't seem to figure it out. I think, like, it is informative that that this season Rocco Rios Novo, the keeper for Phoenix, only has 3 clean sheets, which is probably, indicative of why, when you've got Arteaga and Trejo with 21 goals between them already this season, You're not looking at more in the wins column. I will say that Arteaga's sending off against San Antonio, while it is in the strictest sense, like it is one of their biggest threats, and maybe quite literally for the big forward, one of their biggest threats is off the table. It also increases the probability that Danny Trejo will play in a central role rather than out on the wing, and that for me is actually worse.
Were my soldiers that lived through Las Vegas 5-4.
Yeah. That meme might have to come out this weekend.
It has to. Required viewing.
Vegas flashbacks.
Yeah, no, having that pace and that nose for goal through the middle in the heart of our weakened defense. Yeah, it's not a recipe for success, I don't think.
Yeah, the concern too for Phoenix, at least, in this most recent game against San Antonio, if nothing else, Phoenix did look really solid defensively for much of the game, despite playing down a man. So
true.
Absolutely not the type of team that we want to face. Like if they're gonna focus on being defensive, we know how much Locomotive have just struggled to break teams down recently. I mean, Mikka, I guess like the question for Locomotive is, despite all of the other stuff we talked about, how defense is going to be a struggle. Liam Rose is like just returning to fitness in midfield, which obviously that has played a part because of just a lack of like quality depth in midfield. To replace Rose in his absence. And like we said, for all the, making all of the possible accommodations for the fact that it's a complex role and people need time to learn it. All that being said, the maybe worst part of Locomotive's game recently, despite the fact that they've conceded a lot of goals across the last 3 games, across this whole 8-game run, the worst part has really been goal scoring. Because they just haven't been doing it. And when you look at the raw numbers, I mean, Lucho has 1 goal in this 8-game run from the penalty spot against RGV. That's it. Josue Aron Gomez has 2 goals and an assist during that time. Denis Kostishin and Petar Petrovic have no goal involvements in the 8-game run, let alone not goals themselves. They haven't assisted or scored a goal in this entire run. So, I mean, when you're looking for like, we're, picking through the bones of like what's going on at Locomotive, at a certain point, it's just like, well, we're not scoring very much, and it's going to be hard to win a game when we're just not scoring goals. So what do Locomotive need to do? Oh, Zacharias has also only contributed the 1 assist in his time, and he has not scored since the San Diego Loyal game back in April. So anyways, like it's been an absolutely torrid run for Locomotive forwards. And all that being said, like what do Locomotive do? Because there is no real like reinforcement. We've got Manny Sinupe, we've got Chris Garcia. They've played bit roles this season. Beyond that, like there's not a lot of difference makers in a goal scoring capacity off the bench. And if our big guys aren't confident, then it's just hard to see where the goals are going to come from.
Yeah, it's so hard to pull yourself out of this situation, as we've talked about ad nauseum for 2 months. Geez, the numbers you just read out there are very sobering, Phil. I mean, it's been bad, horrible. We're probably the worst form team in USL Championship right now, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe the Hartford or someone might be worse than us. I don't know. They did just beat New Mexico United, though. Yeah, with Lucho Solignac not putting the ball in the net, Josue Aron Gomez getting unlucky, hitting the post, and then some of those other players you mentioned not even contributing really or looking at all like they're going to score, much less make a shot on goal. It's hard to see who's going to take the game in Phoenix by the scruff of the neck and try to actually win or at least draw or something positive. Yeah, I hate to be so negative about Locomotive, but that's all it's been. 8 games, winless. we have to be realistic about these things. It's just not been good enough. And I do have time and sympathy for the players that are just worn down. I just think the squad's not big enough. I've been saying this most of the season, even in that run that we were good, we were seeing a lot of the same 11, and, that can lead to complacency at best and a complete injury disaster at worst, right? Or transfer disaster if you want to relate it to this specific instance. So it's just a bad time, and Locomotive should really be cultivating their relationship with their hardcore fans now more than ever, because the people that show up to the coaches show, that show up in 105 and sing for 90 plus minutes, I mean, those people are going to be with you through these awful runs of form, and we've seen a lot of them in recent years. So they just need to really, I think, tread carefully with their fans, because these situations can lead to disinterest, really, and people to stop coming. And I've seen some shouts for that, and that's really alarming, that people feel like they don't want to go, to support the boys. And I kind of don't blame them, if you don't want to spend your hard-earned money for this, I don't think you could tell somebody no, you know what I mean? So I'm kind of rambling at this point, but it's just been really, really bleak.
Yeah, I mean, and it's hard to argue with the fact that, even last season, which felt obviously so negative, right? Started negatively, and then there was actually a really good run there in the middle. And then July 9th, they picked up a 1-0 win against the Switchbacks, and then went on a 4-game losing streak and lost 5 out of the next 6, including the only draw they got in that time was a draw, the 4-4 at Colorado Springs, that essentially ended their hopes of the playoffs, right? This terrible run at kind of the same time of the year, July 16th through, August 20th. That was this horrible, horrible run. And this time it actually began even earlier than our negative run last year, that really knocked us down. I mean, it's really disappointing.
Was it you who said that we have one less point than we did at this point last season?
That was Christian, actually. Okay. Yeah. So we have, shout out to Christian who couldn't be on tonight, but we have one less point than at this point, through 22 games last season. So we are essentially in the same exact spot, but we're actually a little worse off than 2022 Locomotive at the moment.
Wow. Well, we'll see. We'll see what happens. I mean, I'm a sucker for pain, so I'm gonna watch it. Are you gonna watch it, Phil?
Yeah. I don't think I'll be able to pull off a watch party for this one, unfortunately. But so the OnlyFans will have to wait. But
the creators will be upset, but that's okay. I mean, I think we've said all we can say on this, huh?
Yeah, it's going to be a tough game. The reality is Phoenix, while inconsistent, have a lot of quality. And while Locomotive have loads of quality in their squad as well, it just doesn't look, when quality players don't look confident and don't look fit, it is a recipe for what we've seen. And that is, unfortunately, I think, where we're at for Locomotive at the moment. Like we said, we hate to be this negative about what's going on, but there's no positive way to spin the fact that we haven't won in 8 games, and one of the primary pieces of Brian Claerhaut's team is now playing in Hungary. There's no spin that I can put on that as a fan to make that sound positive, and without any hope of reinforcements. I think unfortunately it is what it is. We just haven't looked good. It's not just we're losing some tough games or something like that. It's we're getting absolutely outplayed week in and week out by bang average teams. And so It's like our players know that they can hit better levels in this, and like at the same time, I think they just can't physically get back to the level that they want to, and that's just how the season's gonna play out. It just feels like we're kind of coasting now to the end, and I mean, some players, to be honest, look like they're ready for the season to be over because they're just exhausted.
Well, there's a long way to go until that. So,
only 16 more games.
Unfortunately.
Yeah. So with all that being said, it does about bring us to the end. Hopefully we'll be talking about, a team that looks reborn in Phoenix. That would be fitting. Phoenix Rising, Locomotive born from the ashes.
That'd be nice.
Who knows? Like it, hope springs eternal, and it is something that at the end of the day, we want Locomotive to win. We want Locomotive to perform well. We don't enjoy like having to have these sorts of conversations. It sucks. So I'd much rather get on here and just rave about what's going on the field, and hopefully they give us a reason to on Saturday. But if you did enjoy and this was cathartic for you or whatever, please consider subscribing to the podcast. Times, I assume, will get better at some point. And we know what this team's capable of. So,
and check out Phil's Patreon piece. It's free for everyone to read. And if you like that, then subscribe to our Patreon. Help us help support the show. It really helps. Yeah.
No, absolutely. Wanted to check it out. It's one of those things where that was a pure fan reaction to the news, with some supporting evidence for why I felt why I feel the way that I do, and it didn't feel right, like keeping that paywalled, because the whole point of it is it's a fan reaction, and at the end of the day, like, we're supporters as well. And I just wanted everybody to hopefully get eyes on it, share your opinion. Like, let me know what you think. If you agree, if you think I'm full of shit, like, let me know.
You did put your and your email at the top. So
I figured it would, if anyone had issues, I wanted them to know where to be able to go, because I definitely didn't want anybody else, getting unnecessary, anybody catching strays, managing the Seriously Loco account. It's like, nope, I wrote this and I feel comfortable saying that with my whole chest. So, like, feel free to reach out to your boy. At the end of the day, like we said, we're supporters. We want to make sure, we support Locomotive through all of this, and we want them to be successful as much as anybody. This is our outlet. So if you enjoy sharing in the outlet, check out the Patreon. There'll be more stuff going up there, especially ahead of a reunion with a certain former manager in a couple of weeks. So keep an eye out for that stuff. And until next time, stay loco.